What'd you think about that workout?
It was good. I loved it. I was very surprised to do 100 pounds, and it felt really easy.
I was going to ask you how much weight you did on that snatch.
Yeah, it felt like what 65 used to feel like.
I was pleasantly surprised that, what was it? I think I worked up to 155, and I expected 135 to feel crushing, so that was way better than I thought it was going to be.
Yeah, it was nice.
Okay, sounds good.
Okay, let's see. Let me try to pull up. Almost ready. Okay.
Let's kick this thing off. Coffee with the Coaches, episode 16. And you know we're at the mega desk.
Megados.
As always. And I just screwed up something with mine. I know I told you my messages were acting weird. And now it's doing something crazy. Anyway, I'll have to close that out and figure that out later. Well, we're here again with a dad joke. I know I texted you last night. Did you have one ready?
Mm-hmm.
You did? Okay. Let's see. I've been making you go first for the past few times we've done this.
Why don't you take it away?
Yeah, let me start with the terrible one, and then
we can end on a good one.
You can bring it home with a better joke. All right. If spaghetti made an action movie, what would it be called?
Impastas?
Mission Impossible.
Ah, dang it.
You were close. You were close. All right, what you got? Bring us home with a better one.
All right. How do you organize an outer space party?
An outer space party? I don't know.
You plan it.
See, that's the type of joke I would tell. That was kind of stupid. It was kind of a groaner. And I like it.
Funnier coming out of my mouth.
All right. Well, since we don't have any good jokes for you today, what are we going to talk about with episode 16?
All right. We're getting on up there in our episodes.
Yeah.
Look at us go. All right. So today we're going to talk about what was the general direction?
Well, we were talking about we talked about.
I know what I'm thinking in my head, but I don't
one-on-one
remember exactly what we're
training.
Yeah.
We talked about kind of personal training, one-on-one sessions, things like that. And we were also going to touch on the unilateral testing that we've been doing this week. So.
Yeah. So. That'd be a good place to start, I think, talking about how we are implementing into the program this week some unilateral testing. It probably would have been helpful to have this conversation maybe before today, so people would have had an idea of what they were going into. But it can be helpful going into Friday. So if you guys can listen to this before we move into the unilateral testing that we have coming up on Friday, that'd be really helpful. Maybe, or the fact that you've already been through it on Tuesday will still be helpful.
Today, Tuesday, we did the upper body version of it, and then Friday we're going to do the lower body version of it, right? Okay. Yeah. So unilateral testing, what is that?
Right on. So what we're trying to assess with this is basically across the board, since we're doing it in the gym as a whole, what I'm going to do is go through and look at everybody's results and see just in the gym as a whole, do we have some weaknesses across the board, either from side to side or in pull versus push in the upper body with single arm movements. And so today, for instance, our assessment basically was upright row, right arm and left arm, doing the same weight on each side for maximum reps on each side. And then we're going to repeat the same process on the right and left strict press. So side to side, same weight each side. In an ideal world, what a person would be able to do is the same number of reps and the same weight in an upright row and in a strict press. We can get a little bit deeper into this and say, technically, you should be able to do like 5 reps of each with like 25% of your body weight or something like that. But we're not going to get that super technical with it because
we're kind of just getting started with the whole idea.
Exactly. And you can expose a lot of weaknesses and imbalances just by figuring out what is possible from side to side and in a pull versus push in the upper body and lower body anyway with that. So what I'm going to do is go in and look at all of the results, see people's side-to-side disparities, see if it's something that we need to focus more on in the programming and have more unilateral-based training, or if there is a huge discrepancy from an upright row to strict pressing, see if we need to utilize some more basically that vertical pulling from the floor to the ceiling and to strengthen specific parts of the shoulder that could be weakened. Because if you are much stronger in your press versus your pull, it's very likely that your shoulder is at risk for injury because it is out of balance from one side to the other.
And that was going to be one of my questions. I mean, the whole point of this is to kind of influence future programming. So we can, if we have general disparities in the gym where it seems like everybody's stronger in the pressing movements than it is in the pulling movements or vice versa, then that helps us be a lot more deliberate and intelligent with the way we set up our workouts.
Yeah, exactly.
And then so how might that carry over to the lower body stuff that we're going to be introducing on Friday?
Yeah, so on the lower body movements, the biggest thing we're going to be paying attention to in the low body is the front rack step up. So being able to step onto a box that is above knee height, ideally, if that's not possible for some people without pushing off really aggressively from the floor or not being able to control it on the way back down, then we'll lower that height, obviously. But we're going to test side to side and see what some possible imbalances are from side to side and whether or not a person is able to do a single leg deadlift from side to side. These won't necessarily translate as closely as the upright row and the strict press to each other, but they'll at least expose some weaknesses in either the posterior chain or in that squat pattern from leg to leg. So if you know you've got one hip that always bugs you on squats, or you know you've always got that tricky foot that wants to go wild while you're doing a single leg deadlift, this can kind of assess some of those things. And so I'm really hoping that we'll be pretty proficient at the single leg deadlift part of it because we do those quite a bit. So much, but we'll see.
We'll definitely find the people. Well, never mind. I'm not even going to say that. I don't want to scare off people. But so this, I guess, to kind of carry this back to what we talked about with the upper body, then we'd be looking at discrepancies between maybe the hinging movement and the squatting movement, or I should say pattern, like hinging pattern versus squatting pattern. And then obviously right side versus left side. You know, if you can see one of those is wildly out of balance with the other, it gives you an area that you can focus on to bring things together and avoid future injury and maybe even make some of the current aches and pains that you've got, make those start to get better.
Yeah, exactly. And like a big picture view, these things really translate into like your bigger lifts, like the squat, the bilateral, which is both feet on the ground squat, your deadlift with both feet on the ground, your strict press, your even pull-ups, anything that you do with both hands or both legs. If you have a discrepancy from side to side, like you're able to do 13 strict presses on one arm but only able to do like 9 on the other arm with the same weight, well, all of a sudden, if you really focus on bringing up that weaker arm, bam, there goes your max, 20 pounds probably, because you've got that weaker arm that's just not helping you finish out those bilateral reps. Same on the squat, same on the deadlift, same on pull-ups. You know, this just translates to a lot of things. Bench press. So bringing up that weaker side can fix a lot of these issues, and also if you're currently in pain can help kind of rehab some of those issues if it is a strength issue.
Yeah.
And we can get further into maybe it's not a strength issue, and that's kind of where the conversation goes over into some one-on-one stuff.
Yeah, that's actually a great segue there.
Yeah. So a lot of people don't really maybe, I'm sure they know this, but don't necessarily utilize it or remember it from time to time when they have issues that kind of pop up and bug them. But Michael and I do one-on-one training pretty often throughout the middle of the day. We have these big gaps in the middle of the day or later in the evening or mornings while I'm coaching. Michael might come in and work with somebody, and I'll come in the evenings and work with people. But when you kind of reveal some of these imbalances or weaknesses or painful joints and things, that's a good time to talk to us about maybe taking on some one-on-one opportunity to kind of help alleviate those issues or prevent any future more major injury from occurring.
Yeah, and it's something I guess we really don't talk about it a whole lot.
Yeah.
I know we do it, and but we don't ever really advertise our our one-on-one availability or sessions or anything like that. So I guess we'll take this opportunity now to advertise it and talk about it a little bit.
Yeah.
But yeah, I've gotten a lot more into that over the last couple of years, I guess, just working one-on-one with different people for different reasons. Some people just like to do some personal training sessions getting started with CrossFit because they want to learn the basics, but then there's some people that just want to dig a little deeper into something specific or work on rehabbing something, or there's loads of different things that people work on with this type of thing. So how about you? Like, I know you've been we see you in the afternoons working with the kids occasionally.
I got my girls in the afternoon. They're kicking butt, taking names. They're awesome. Yeah, and so like the only reason I do one-on-one with them, they would fit perfectly well into a group session. It's just they're younger, and so it helps to be able to work one-on-one and make sure that they are moving appropriately and not necessarily worried about everybody else in the room. So I try to seclude them as much as we can just to make sure that they they can kind of pay attention or listen a little bit more in depth. Just whenever there's a lot of other people in the room, it can be distracting sometimes, especially when you're like a teenager or something. You're just kind of worried about what other people are like looking or doing or whatever. I mean, we get into that as adults too, but
I can't tell you how many of the 30 to 40-year-olds have the attention span of an eggplant. So as a teenager it can be even worse.
So and they're awesome though. Like they really, after getting into it, I'm like, they don't even need that. They could jump right into a group session and but I think they really enjoy just being able to work solo with a coach. But so there's instances like that, or we got people that who want to maybe just always work as one-on-one, like they have no interest in doing a group class, and that's
and I've
totally
got a few
fine.
of those right now currently that just they don't care about the class format. They like the one-on-one type of attention and direction, I guess. So I get some of those too. Yeah,
and that's totally cool. Like if that's just not your jam, then we're not going to push it on you until you decide otherwise, if ever. And so that's another option right there. One thing that can be exposed a lot, and specifically what we have with the programming this week while we're testing that unilateral, those strength discrepancies, is perhaps you have one side that just always bugs you, and you know that, I definitely cannot get as many reps, or I can't do nearly as much weight in this upright row than I can in the press or something like that, and you've just got this joint that bugs you and bugs you and bugs you. We can only do so much with something like that in a group class setting.
Yeah, that's a really good point.
Yeah, like sometimes there are those needs where things just need to be taken care of. Outside of that, 2 to 3 times a week, for at least 30 to 40 minutes at a time, and be working on perhaps it's a flexibility issue, perhaps it's maybe you have the flexibility and it's just a mobility issue. You're having trouble actually getting your muscles to pull you into that position. Those are 2 different things, which a lot of people often don't understand. And we could kind of talk about that for a second, I suppose, is, the flexibility versus mobility. If you're laying on the ground and you try to take your arm overhead, and so like you were basically taking your thumb to the ground over your head. If it can lay all the way down, that's cool, but then when you stand up, if you're not able to actually pick your arm up and bring your thumb directly over the top of your head, then maybe you have a mobility issue because you can't actually get the strength of your muscles to pull you into that position. That's going to expose some sort of weakness in that position. And that's something that needs some specific programming, because we're not really going to do a lot of stuff like that within the class setting. And the same can be said for a lot of lower body issues, painful joints. It's usually not an issue right at the joint. It's usually some sort of issue either in connective tissues or in the muscles above or below that joint that kind of signal and create that pain, or perhaps provoke an injury at some point at a joint. It's very, 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 very often, unless it's just like one blunt force traumatic injury, it is happening because of an imbalance somewhere. It's happening because of a stiff tissue or short tissue or some sort of flexibility or mobility issue above or below that weak spot.
Well, and speaking on that, what's a relatively common one that you see where somebody's having a joint issue or pain or something like that? A relatively common one, maybe a weakness or a tightness. What have you ran into recently that might give us an example of what you're talking about here?
Yeah. Oh, man. So one really good example I think that a lot of us can probably relate to is somebody's shoulder is probably ached or hurt or something at some point in time. That one often comes from either the inability to have flexibility in a flexed shoulder position. So kind of like what I explained just a minute ago, is being able to take your arm directly overhead while you're laying on the ground, and your thumb actually, or your forefinger actually make contact with the ground in that overhead position while your elbow is still locked out. That one, or being able to take your arm up and touch your bicep to your ear in an overhead position while you're standing up. So if those positions kind of either aren't all the way there, like you're not able to get that bicep maybe even above your shoulder at all without already provoking some pain right there. There's either a weakness in those tissues or a flexibility issue that's not allowing you to get into that position. And so that gets really tricky once you hop up onto a pull-up bar and do 20 kipping pull-ups in a workout. You might be able to do those kipping pull-ups, but your shoulder is not happy about it.
And so that's where you run into my shoulder's killing me from yesterday's workout. And it's probably because that person either didn't have the flexibility, the necessary flexibility to be able to do that without aggravating the tissues. And
so they're able to use momentum or the surrounding muscles to pull themselves into that position, but that connective tissue that isn't quite there yet is just being pounded and pounded and pounded on with volume and reps without really paying any mind to the fact that it's not ready for that just yet.
So then that kind of circles us back to somebody's got an issue like that. It needs kind of some more specific attention, and that's where this one-on-one conversation comes back up, because you know, if that's you, you'd really benefit from a one-on-one session, some one-on-one sessions to where you can work on your specific imbalance or tightness or whatever it might be, and then that way you can get back to doing the stuff in the group class that you like without actually flaming anything up.
And that's just one example, and things like this can happen, you know, at the hip. Maybe you have one hip that is very, very tight in a toe forward position, while the other hip likes that position. You can squat with one toe forward and one toe kind of turned out to the side. That's your comfortable position, but maybe you're trying to force your feet into some sort of different position, and then all of a sudden you wind up with either some low back pain or hip pain after reps and reps and reps of squatting. Those are things that need to be looked at with kind of a trained eye to make sure that maybe you need to alter your stance, or maybe there is a really tight, maybe you've got perhaps a really, really tight ankle position, or the calves are locking you up so you're not able to get your knees over your toes as much as you need to get into a safe position. Like, people don't think about this, but like tight ankles can cause back pain. That's way up the chain.
That's what I was thinking when you were describing all this, is how often I see somebody that describes a pain in a particular area, and then as we dig in, we find that it's actually coming from somewhere way down the chain, you know. And that's what I was thinking of. Back pain caused by something in the ankle. It's
and
wild
I've had
how that
shoulder
works.
Pain. I've had shoulder pain a long time ago in the past, which now I'm learning is probably because of my tight ankles, because I tried to overhead squat while I cannot actually get in that deep squat position, so I compensate by cranking back on my shoulders to make sure that bar stays over my feet. Well, the issue was my ankles. All of a sudden when I, you know, like get a lift underneath my heel and start working on my ankle mobility, oh wow, it feels good in my shoulders.
Yeah, and that's just one that takes some one-on-one attention and focus. Well, so if somebody did want to set something up like this, how would they do it?
Oh yeah, just talk directly to us.
Send us a message.
Exactly. If this is you, while we're going through this and talking about this is kind of like, oh man, maybe that's what's wrong, maybe this is my issue, like, let us know. We can run you through an assessment, figure out what might be your weak link or your limiting factor or the cause of whatever pain that you're dealing with right now. We can attempt to try our best to get to the root of those issues. Not necessarily, maybe sometimes you just have something that we're like, I don't feel comfortable messing with that. We might just try to send you to somebody else, and that's cool too. It's just don't keep pushing through the pain.
Yeah, because that's really the only, I mean, that's just going to make things worse if you just keep doing that.
Yeah, exactly.
So yeah, this is a great conversation to bring all this up.
Yeah, hit us up if you guys need some one-on-one good love and attention.
Yeah. Well, where do we go from there? Is there anything more to say on that, or did we wrap it up?
What about hitting real quick? Maybe you don't want to do one-on-one training, but you just feel like you need a little bit more out of your programming, or you want to work on some extra things outside of class, and you're kind of worried about maybe doing too much, or not really sure even where to start at that point.
Extra work type of stuff.
Yeah. This brings up another good point with the one-on-one deal. Like, maybe we're not going to actually work with you specifically, like, in person. Maybe we won't be like actually coaching you in person for some things, but if you have a specific goal of maybe trying to work towards your first pull-up, or want to train for the powerlifting meet, or you want to include some running in your programming, we can kind of direct you to the right resources, or perhaps provide that programming for you. I am not I can kind of determine volume and stuff in running, like what's safe volume to add in, but I'm not necessarily like going to provide a lot of feedback on like form in running, because I'm not a running coach. I'll leave that to somebody else who knows what they're doing, because that's just not my jam.
That's
like,
not your area of expertise.
Exactly. Like I feel good about maybe providing the additional like warm-ups and extra strength training that you may need. Like, if you're going to be running a lot, you definitely want to be taking care of your hamstrings, you definitely want to be taking care of your ankles, you definitely want to be taking care of your core, because those things, once those break down, that can cause a lot of issues. But perhaps you're trying to add in some other things like that can be a good place to have that conversation with us also about where you maybe should go, or if we would be a good fit to provide that additional programming for you, depending on your goals.
So this would be the same thing. Just if you're thinking about those things, hit us up, send us a message, or mention it while you're here in the gym. I know it's tricky trying to bring things like this up in the middle of class or right at the end of class when the next one's about to start. So you can definitely mention it, but I think the easiest way for me, at least, is to send me a text message, because I can actually save it until I can have the time to really give it the attention. So in my case, I think the best idea would be to send me a text message and let me know what you're thinking, or let me know questions you might have about the this topic.
Yeah.
How about you?
Same.
I mean, are you in the same
boat? I would
boat?
prefer somebody to actually like send me a text message. That way I can read it and have it in writing to refer back to on like goals and things like that.
It's really tricky for me when people just make passing comments in the gym in class, because those can really get lost, or I'm
try to remember those things.
And so I didn't
even from the beginning of the hour to the end of class, like if you
there's a lot that goes on.
yeah. And it breaks my heart a lot of times to watch somebody like do a movement, and then you see them kind of like wince in pain, and they're like, that kind of hurts, and you're like, something's wrong, and you want to like dive in and get to the root of it right then and there, but that's not possible in a class setting. And so maybe we're going through and we start doing some other things, and then it might just totally go out of my head, the fact that Johnny over here just basically scowled whenever he pressed a 10-pound weight overhead, and you're like, oh, that's not right.
Something's there.
Something's not right there. And then maybe we were going in to do some other movements, and the other movements weren't painful, so then you kind of forget about that. Like, we want to get down to the root of those issues, but it's just hard to do that whenever it's not brought to our attention at the forefront.
And there's so much more we can do with this in a one-on-one setting, as opposed to trying to make adjustments on the fly and all that. And that's another one that I would talk about too, is sometimes it gets old just making the same old substitutions in class every time. So with a couple of one-on-one type of settings where we can work on different things, that can really open up your possibilities to different things you can do in the class.
That's a really good point.
So that's one that I work with a lot.
That's one of like
just
the
trying
biggest...
to give people new options or more options, just so that they're not feeling like they're doing the same thing over and over again, because it really just comes down to the only thing that works is consistency. So if you can find some way to stay consistent, then
and still get a little variety.
Because if you're doing the same old thing all over and over again, it can get boring, and
and that's where we lose people.
People's motivation burns out, or their interest burns out. But with something like this, we can find ways to keep things fresh to where you're getting the intended stimulus. Maybe chest to bar pull-ups are not your jam, but we can get the exact same stimulus with a lot of other different movements. So that's a lot easier to do in a one-on-one setting, is to dig into those specific issues that make more sense for you. So
exactly.
I could ramble on about that for a while.
There's
I'll
so
cut it
much
off
to
there.
that. There's so much to that. And a lot of times like pain isn't necessarily happening because of a weakness or an imbalance. Like maybe you're just doing too much, or maybe you are too sporadic in your attendance, I guess is a good way to put it. But that was a really, really good point about how if you feel like you're just bored of doing the same old thing, the same old modifications for a certain movement, that maybe you got an iron shoulder or something that just doesn't go into a certain position. Well, you don't have to do the same modification on pull-ups every single time. Like there's different things we can do, but a lot of times when we just get into that class setting, it's much easier, or it flows much better with the class to just say, okay, if you're not going to do pull-ups today, we're going to work on this version right here, unless you have something else directed to you by your individual coach. Sometimes it's just the best way to do it. The class is amazing. It's fantastic. There's so many things that you can gain from the class setting and like having a good time, getting a good workout in. But there's so much that isn't hit on in a 1-hour class with 15 other people. There's so much more benefit to be had by actually digging into these things. And we don't give this service away for free because it has a lot of value. So as you're listening to this, just understand, like, this isn't don't be surprised by the fact that we're going to charge additional for something like that.
I guess I thought that was a given, but that is a good point to bring that up.
The class has its value, obviously, because our membership reflects that, but this also has even a higher standard of value because it's 100% tailored to you. So don't neglect that fact. But if you are willing to invest in your health and your pain-free range of movement, then it's something that's very, very worthwhile for you.
That just deserves a standing ovation, and we should stop there. What do you think? Is there anything more to say about that?
I think we got it all.
All right. Well, you've got the directive. If this is speaking to you, hit one of us up, and we'll see if we can make things run a little better for you.
Yeah, right on.
All right. Well, we'll see you in the next podcast.
Bye.